Chosen one, there is a word that has been carefully withheld, perfectly timed for the season of your life you are currently experiencing. Not for a more polished version of yourself, nor for a more structured chapter. For this one, the version of you carrying what you are carrying right now, God is speaking today, and I want you to understand the urgency in that sentence. It is not panic or pressure. It is the urgency of a father who has seen you silently carry something that the majority of your peers have never seen. He has determined that the present moment is the best time to inform you about the true events of that season. The silence was not a sign of absence, the waiting was not a form of punishment, and the quiet conviction you almost gave up, despite its counterintuitive nature, was proof that you were ready for the next phase. This moment was not discovered by you. Rather, it was brought to you by an entity that has known your name for much longer than you have known your own story. As a result, I am requesting that you stop distracting yourself, not because you must be prepared. Rather, you are present because you are available. What God has to say to you in this hour will not leave you in the same state in which He found you. The message goes as follows. I am aware that the Spirit has placed these words on my heart for someone who has been anticipating just this type of moment. The information you are about to receive is not taken from a script. It is what I am confident is correct for the specific version of you who is currently in this season. So before we go any further, I'd like to ask you a question. If you are currently in the presence of others, remember that this moment is for you, not them. Disregard any distractions that are currently vying for your attention. They should be temporarily put aside. Because the upcoming event requires your full attention, you are entitled to receive it uninterrupted. And before we go any further, I'd like to explain the significance of this message, as I don't want you to leave before you arrive. By the end, you'll understand why the silence you've been experiencing was not what you expected. You will receive 3 specific messages from God that are currently directed at your life. These messages are not general encouragement. They are words with genuine weight and direction. You're about to hear a revelation that neuroscientists have been studying for decades. This revelation explains why some people can clearly hear God while others remain static. It will also suggest potential solutions. And you will conclude with a declaration that I am confident will stay with you long after this event has ended. Stay until the end. The reason you were brought here is the thing that exists. I'd like to start with a single word from an older language than any we speak today. Once you understand the true meaning of this word, you will never hear it the same way again. The term is Shema, Shema. It appears in what could be the most important sentence in all of sacred scripture. Shema, O Israel, listen, because the Lord is one. The vast majority of people read that line and proceed to move. They interpret it as an instruction to pay attention and use one's ears. However, this is not the full meaning of Shema, not even close. Shema conveys a meaning that the English word listen cannot fully convey in its original Hebrew. It is not simply a matter of listening with one's ears. It is the act of listening with one's entire being, focusing one's attention on a specific object and aligning one's whole being with the spoken word. Your intention, posture of identity, and attention. Shema was not considered a passive act in ancient times. It was an assertion that you were focused on the content of the conversation. As a result, when God tells you to stop everything and listen when the urgency of those words strikes you, He is asking for your entire being, not just your ears. This changes everything, and the majority of people overlook it. When God says the Shema, He is not shouting into an empty room, hoping that someone will pick up. He is breaking through the noise of an ordinary day with the weight of something specific. He shemas when he is certain that the individual is ready, when the season has completed its purpose, and when the word he has been holding has finally found the right moment to be spoken. You can have that experience right now. However, I am aware of the emotions that are brewing in some of you as you hear that, because I have heard it from those who have been through extended, difficult periods, seasons in which the sky appeared to be closed and prayers appeared to vanish before they could be answered. You want to know why I haven't heard God's voice despite the fact that He has been speaking? Why did so many of my mornings feel like I was reaching for silence, only to find nothing there? I'd like to respond to that. In all honesty, the silence you experienced was not indicative of absence. Waiting wasn't a form of punishment. Rejection did not cause the dryness. The ancient command to Shema is accompanied by a theology that holds that the person being asked to hear must first be sufficiently still to receive. Furthermore, we may not always be able to create peace. Occasionally, the Father creates it for us by removing the noise, by withdrawing the voices that used to fill every corner of your life, by allowing a season of silence that felt unbearable, but was, in fact, an act of preparation. He wasn't disregarding you. He was positioning you. He was doing the same thing for you that a farmer does for a seed, enveloping it in darkness to prevent it from being permanently buried. However, a man in the ancient world understood this concept better than almost anyone else, because the conditions beneath the ground are exactly what an organism needs to evolve into its intended form. Moses was his given name. He is 80 years old when we meet him at a watershed moment in his life, when everything changes. He has spent 40 years in the wilderness, 40 years away from the location where he believed his story was supposed to unfold, 40 years away from the identity he believed he was supposed to embody, 40 years of silence, obscurity, and mornings that must have felt at times as if the promise had been made to someone else. Then there was a bush that caught fire. That encounter determined the trajectory, assignment, and narrative of an entire people. However, the encounter could not have taken place on the first day. No, the wilderness did not distract Moses from his calling. It was the preparation for it. Individuals capable of conveying that message and confidently addressing Pharaoh and God were initially developed in solitude. A vessel that had previously been certified was required for the task. Although you are not 80 years old, you are familiar with the wilderness, and I want you to keep this knowledge as we progress. Wilderness comes before the burning bush, not vice versa. Subsequently, I'm currently hearing the Spirit whisper these words into my heart for you. I noted your silence. Every morning I watched as you approached me and felt like the signal had vanished. I was never absent. I was never far from my home. I was present in every room, and you chose to stick to your beliefs despite having valid reasons to change them. I was constructing an object in silence that could not have been built in noise. I've been looking forward to this moment for a long time, waiting for you to be sufficiently still, open, and willing to hear the words I've always wanted to say during your lifetime. The foundation of what I've just shown, the depth of Shemar's meaning, the nature of God's silence, and the experience Moses had prior to the burning bush are all real. However, they are only the first layer of God's message to you today. Because the following question must be addressed, and I know it is currently residing within some of you. Why have so many chosen ones felt disconnected from the signal over time if God has been communicating with them constantly? What is the reason for the belief that clarity is a phenomenon that occurs in other people? What causes the sensation of being blocked by the frequency? There is an answer to that question, and it is not what you expected. Please remain with me. Before we begin, I'd like to use a metaphor that I believe better captures the chosen one's experience during a suppressed season than any other I've seen. Visualize a radio. A powerful and well-built radio capable of detecting signals from long distances. However, at some point, The dial moved slightly away from its original position. There is no malfunction. Not destroyed. I recently relocated. The speaker emits static fragments of something genuine, which are interrupted and distorted by the small gap between the dial's current and intended positions. The station continues to broadcast its programming in a clear and consistent manner. Despite the fact that the signal is at its strongest, the receiver remains inactive. In a long, hot season, that person is the chosen one. God has not decreased his broadcasting. There is no silence in heaven. Your intended connection has not been severed. However, there has been a disruption in the receiver's ability to hear, the frequency that your brain is able to access. And it happened gradually, quietly, and without your permission, starting at a young age. I will provide you with the actual research findings. For decades, neuroscientists studying the electrical activity of the human brain have been tracking a phenomenon known as brainwave frequencies. In addition, the brain generates one frequency that is distinct from the others. It is known as the gamma wave. Furthermore, they have made extraordinary discoveries about it. So, gamma wave activity correlates with the brain's most advanced operational states. Ancient peoples referred to this type of awareness as receiving from a higher place, which includes the ability to hold complex ideas in clarity, make rapid creative connections, and experience peak intuition. Gamma activity is naturally higher in children, especially those who are very young. It's as if they had already set the dial to the appropriate position when they arrived. You can see it. Children learn at an astonishing rate. It is impossible to explain how accurately they perceive objects. They travel the world with an openness and receptivity that most adults have lost touch with. Dr. Robert Lake, a 34-year-old researcher who has spent his life studying the mechanics of this, has focused much of his research on the evolution of this ability. His comprehensive framework includes numerous aspects of this investigation, some of which were given titles that differed depending on the person with whom he collaborated. The discovery that stopped him, the thing he said changed everything, was what he found when he tracked what happens to gamma as a child grows older. The youthful brain was one chapter of what they were creating. The decline effect, which occurs between childhood and adulthood, has been identified. Gamma wave capacity in the average person begins to decline around the age of 7 and gradually increases as formal education, performance pressure, social comparison, chronic stress, and the weight of adulthood accumulate. In response to the demands placed on it, the brain switches from gamma to lower, heavier states. States were built to ensure survival, manage threats, and endure the day. The dial gradually drifts, making it unsuitable for perceiving or hearing from a deeper position. This is the point at which this becomes especially important to you, chosen one, and I'd like you to consider the following. Gamma capacity is reduced by the average person, who experiences it with little awareness. They were never starting from a particularly high point, but you weren't born with an average baseline. Your sensitivity, the depth with which you experience emotions, and the way you have always viewed the world at a level that was difficult to articulate to those who were not wired in the same way, were not personality quirks. They were gamma traits. That was the frequency that God instilled in you before the world influenced you. When the decline effect subsided and the weight of life began to pull the dial away from its original position, you fell further than the majority of your peers. The ache between the person you were as a child and the person you have worked so hard to become as an adult, the sense of potential you can almost touch but can't quite reach, is not your imagination. You started at a higher altitude, and the drop felt longer. That is not indicative of weakness. That is the gap created by a frequency that is still present in you, genuine and waiting to be returned to its proper place. And this is how you can be confident that I am accurately describing your experience. Because there are undeniable, specific daily indicators that the frequency has not vanished, but rather decreased. Symptoms that you've probably been experiencing for years without anyone taking the time to explain them. Sleep does not alleviate the initial fatigue. Not the fatigue caused by a long work week or a late night. The type that is present when you awaken in the morning. The kind that lives beyond the physical body, behind the eyes, in the chest, and in the act of getting through a day that shouldn't be so expensive. It is known by numerous names around the world. However, when a chosen one is exhausted, what is often happening beneath the surface is that a spirit is working overtime to maintain a frequency that should flow naturally, but is being held back. The suppression is being opposed by your inner receiver. Furthermore, the conflict robs you of something. Not because you are fragile, but because you were designed to withstand more than the current signal can provide. The second indicator is an emotional surge that occurs without any discernible cause. While driving or sitting in a quiet place, you may feel a sudden surge of hope that fades before you can grasp it, or a sense of calm that appears like a flash of light and then vanishes just as quickly. It's likely that you've described it as being overly sensitive, moody, or just your personality. However, your spirit is currently processing changes that your conscious mind has yet to catch up with. The gamma frequency does not disappear entirely. It gets activated quickly. When it does, it transports information, emotional data, and directional data that are not classified in your typical waking mind. You're not unstable. You are a partially operational receiver that captures signals in between static. The third indicator is that previously comfortable items now appear unsuitable. Conversations that were once effortless now leave you exhausted. When you enter a previously neutral environment, it feels oppressive. Individuals whose company you once sought now make you want to withdraw and protect the items you're carrying. This is not the state of being cold. This does not mean you are becoming more difficult. Something within you is becoming more discerning, more aware of what aligns with your natural frequency and what disrupts it. Your spirit is currently recalibrating and organizing itself. That discomfort is not a problem. It indicates that the dial is in motion. The fourth indicator relates to your dreams. They have undergone a transformation, becoming more vibrant and complex. Sometimes you awaken from them with a sensation that is difficult to describe in everyday language. This sensation is a sense that you were in a real place, that something important was communicated, and that you encountered something just out of reach of your waking mind. There is a reason for this. Gamma wave activity is most accessible at the transition between deep sleep and waking, when the survival brain quiets and the suppression is temporarily lifted. In every tradition, dreamers were not a unique, mystical subset of humanity. The individuals chosen were those whose frequency was most noticeable when the background noise of daily life was reduced. You are not an eccentric dreamer. You are a seer, and your reception is most effective when there is minimal interference. And the fifth sign, which I'd like you to consider for a moment, is synchronicity, which includes numbers that continue to appear at significant moments, a song that plays when you need exactly those words, a conversation that answers a question you haven't asked, a stranger who says something that has a specific impact on you and intent. You've described these events as coincidences, confirmations, or simply the way life sometimes works. However, studies are starting to show that synchronicities are not random noise. They are the result of gamma partially activating, which occurs when the frequency rises to the point where you can detect signals in the environment that others operating at suppressed frequencies cannot perceive. You are not making it. You're currently receiving it. There is an actual distinction. I'd like to know if you recognized anything in the preceding description, if you found yourself nodding in agreement with the emotional waves, fatigue, or a shift in your tolerance for specific people and places. I'd like to ask you a question before we proceed. Allow the information you just received to reach someone else who has been describing these same symptoms and identifying themselves as broken. Allow your agreement to last beyond this moment with gentleness. You were not harmed every time you felt overly sensitive for the world you lived in. Or you were receiving. You were not being dramatic every time you noticed something that others couldn't identify or articulate. You were able to perceive at a frequency that was inaccessible to the majority of those around you. You were not absorbing dysfunction every time you carried a burden that did not entirely belong to you, a grief that was linked to a room, a situation, or a person you barely knew. You were functioning exactly as intended. The chosen individual was always meant to operate with a higher frequency. You were unable to escape that frequency. Quietness ensued. The central question of this message, and one that God is answering urgently in this hour, is whether that frequency can be restored. The response is affirmative. However, before I demonstrate the process, I need to show something more significant. I am required to demonstrate the specific message that God is currently conveying to you rather than the overall message for your life. 3 specific items are significant, and they will be perceived differently now that you understand the internal processes that have been in play. Please stay with me because the next section will bring about a significant transformation. I'm currently hearing 3 things from God about your life. These are not intended for the general public or everyone who receives a message of this nature. Rather, they are intended for you, the specific individual you are, the season you are currently in, and the specific weight that only you are aware of in its entirety. Furthermore, I intend to conduct a thorough examination of each one, as they all hold significant importance. The first item is this. God sees the version you've been carrying in silence, not the edited account you trimmed down to avoid appearing too much, too heavy, or too complicated to others. The full weight, the prayers offered in rooms where no one else was present, the faithfulness that never had an audience, the moments when something in you held on, not because the circumstances provided a logical reason to hold on, but because something deeper than logic simply refused to let go. It is important to remember my statement about Shamar, which stated that in order to truly hear, one must focus their entire being on the spoken word. When God Shamars over a chosen one, he hears both what you say and what you hold. Mary was a young woman living in the ancient world. And the most important aspect of her most critical moment is not the announcement. It is the actions she took before the announcement, before anyone else was aware, before any visible confirmation, before any evidence that the information was correct, and before it was understandable to anyone in her immediate vicinity. She replied in the affirmative. She united her entire being with a term she had yet to fully understand, and she moved in a direction she was still learning about. The heavens observed this. Heaven counted that moment. Every moment of hidden faithfulness, every affirmation spoken in the dark before the arrival of the light, was observed and remembered. Every morning you approached and felt as if nothing had changed, but you continued to rise. This demonstrates your concealed loyalty. Every time, you chose to protect the quiet entity that was growing within you, rather than expose it to people who would not understand it. Every prayer that appeared to dissolve before it could accomplish anything was actually moving in the exact direction it was supposed to. It is obvious to God. He has consistently observed it. In this urgent hour, his first statement is as follows. I can see you in your entirety, not just the portion you demonstrated. The second item is more difficult to obtain. It requires that you be willing to let go of the idea that the season you just had was a waste of time, because it requires something from you. It wasn't. During a wilderness season, 3 items are constructed in a specific location that cannot be built any other way. The first is character, which is not the type of strength that is effective when life is easy, but rather the deep, grounded, immovable kind that has been tested and not broken. The second is discernment, the ability to tell the difference between what is genuine and what is simply loud, between what resonates with the frequency to which you were designed and what only appears to do so. The third vessel has proven to be capable of supporting the weight of the assignment. King, the wilderness was not a detour because God's assignments to chosen ones are heavy and require someone who is prepared to carry them without being destroyed by them. It was the curriculum. God was using what you called isolation as an incubation period. He used the term development to describe what you called a delay. What you called silence, he used as a strategy. He was using what you described as being overlooked to keep you from becoming overwhelmed by the enormity of what was to come, rather than to keep you from receiving it. Consider a seed as a physical object rather than a concept. A seed buried beneath the ground shows no visible evidence of activity. The surface was covered in nothing but earth. However, the seed's most important function occurs beneath the surface, in the darkness. It is evolving. Darkness is not the end of its story. The first chapter is the darkness, in which the roots descend before the tree can ascend, and the size of the growth above the ground is always proportional to the size of the roots beneath. You participated in the first chapter. The roots are more profound than you realize. The third statement God makes is the one with the most forward momentum. And I want to say it clearly, because I don't want to embellish it into something it is not. For those who are beginning the season, I believe you are entering and changing. God is closing doors that should have been closed a long time ago, and this is not punishment. Rather, it is a form of protection. He is removing connections that were using the frequency that was supposed to be fed to you. He is allowing you to walk through doors that your training has prepared you to navigate without stumbling. He is putting you in the company of people whose tasks are interconnected in ways you haven't yet realized. He is bringing clarity to areas where everything has been thick and cloudy, and it is coming quickly. It's similar to how light floods a room once the curtains are fully drawn. This does not imply that every task will be easy. It is a statement that the direction is changing. A change in direction can feel like wings for a chosen one who has been fighting against resistance for a long time. However, I must be forthright with you about the following. There is an entity that will try to keep you from fully absorbing any of these 3 items. It is not a person. It is not due to external circumstances. It lives in an area that is much closer to its home. It is a part of you that has previously been disappointed. Your adversary is not that portion. It is a wound that is hidden beneath protective armor. It is the scar tissue of a faith that has overcome significant adversity, but has yet to reap the full benefits of its achievements. And when it hears the words, its course shifts. Something within it becomes cautious and quiet, not because it does not want the truth to be true, but because it has learned to protect itself from the cost of hoping for something that does not materialize. I'd like to assure that aspect of you that your level of caution is completely justified. You legitimately obtained it. However, I would also like to express the following. Your anxiety about the possibility of actual change does not indicate a lack of readiness. The people who collapsed under breakthrough were not afraid because they were unaware of the weight. Your meticulous caution does not make you ineligible. It demonstrates that you understand the significance of carrying something tangible. And that understanding is precisely what will prepare you to face the upcoming events. It is permissible to assume that this is intended for you. There is no requirement that you earn it before receiving it. It is acceptable to allow the following season to look significantly different than the previous one. It is permissible to stop unilaterally transporting items that were never intended for such transport. Furthermore, you are not required to explain how you transformed into the person you were always meant to be. Before I get into the profound truth of this message, I'd like to share with you a personal reflection that I've been thinking about this season. Something that connects the science I previously demonstrated, such as the gamma frequency, the decline effect, and the receiver drifting away from its home position, to the specific actions that God is currently performing in the lives of chosen individuals. The brain can access a specific frequency when the survival mind's noise stops, allowing for audible perception of deeper aspects. I've realized that a chosen individual does not need to cultivate this state from the ground up. You had it before the world started working on you. And what I've discovered, and years of dedicated research have shown, is that it can be restored under the right conditions. Neither through a discipline that requires the acquisition of everything that you currently lack, nor through years of hard work. By using a method that is significantly more simple and accessible than either of these. In the following section of this message, I will show you exactly what that entails. And once it arrives, I am confident that all of the progress I have made today will be seamlessly integrated in a way that you will not forget. Please remain with me. The most profound truth I've presented to you today is as follows. Shamar never stopped indicating the object. The one that the decline effect research has consistently pointed to. The one that transforms the wilderness, the three things God said, the restored direction, and the entire thing into land more completely than it could without it. God is not asking you to become more spiritually disciplined. He is not asking you to use more willpower to overcome the fog, wait more patiently, or pray more fervently. What he is saying, and the urgency that this message has conveyed from the beginning, is far more important than any of that. The frequency is already inside you. It was there before the world intervened in your life, before the systems arrived. The dial was pulled prior to the decline effect. Before the accumulation of life's burdens, the signal was inaudible. It was inside you at the time. It is currently inside you. God isn't giving you anything new in this urgent season. He is in the process of restoring an original item. Something that was always yours and was never taken, only concealed. Consider Shema. You are invited to listen with your whole being, not as a command to an empty person. God does not recite the Shema over those who are devoid of internal substance. He Shemas oversaw the selection of individuals who possessed the frequency and were eventually positioned to allow it to flow freely. Consider the effect of decline. The study did not show that the gamma frequency disappeared. It was stated that it would become inaudible. The dial is capable of shifting, however, it can be returned to its original position. The signal remains intact. It is waiting. Consider these three items. All of God's restoration, repositioning, and direction shifting are based on this single reality. He has not started from scratch. He is reactivating what was already present. The restoration is based on you, the frequency within you, and the receiver, which was created for this purpose from the start. This is intended for people who believe they have permanently lost their competitive advantage. This is for the person who used to see things clearly, but has been navigating through a fog for longer than they'd like to admit. This is for the person who remembers the sensation of hearing and has been wanting to experience it again in a quiet, persistent, and stubborn manner. This is meant for your use. In this moment, I believe the Spirit is placing these words on my heart for you. I didn't take you through the wilderness to deprive you of your frequency. I brought you through so you could be ready to transport it when it returns, which it will. You won't ignore it. You will understand the significance of the restoration that has been granted to you after experiencing the expense of quieting it down. Proceed. You have more than you realize, and I am with you in every subsequent action. Let me now demonstrate the point I made at the end of the previous section, as I would like to provide more information about the simpler and more accessible item I mentioned. You are entitled to specificity in light of the events we have witnessed together today. Dr. Robert Lake is an individual. For 34 years, he has worked as a neuroscientist, researching the mechanics of gamma wave activity and the methods required to restore it in a brain that has experienced decline. His research has been linked to institutions such as MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Berkeley. Over the course of 34 years, he created a comprehensive system that included many aspects of the problem and numerous tools. Some of these tools were documented using names that were familiar to people in various contexts. One chapter of his career was the maturation of his youthful mind. However, the discovery that stymied him, which he claimed changed the course of history, was related to the brain and audio frequencies. The mechanism is as follows. The majority of people are unaware of the brain's unique properties. When a specific audio frequency is transmitted through stereo headphones, the brain generates a third frequency equal to the difference between the two frequencies, with each ear receiving a slightly different frequency. And, if the input frequencies are properly engineered, the third frequency generated by the brain will fall precisely within the gamma range. The signal is processed by the brain. It entrains the frequency being introduced. EEG data consistently demonstrated across documented studies that measurable gamma activity increases within minutes, a phenomenon that cannot be reliably replicated by years of traditional meditation practice. The 7-minute audio track, which Dr. Lake spent years developing, was specifically designed to introduce the precise frequencies that guide the brain back to the gamma state it was designed to be in. I'd like to inform you of a person who discovered this work. A woman in her late 30s who had spent years looking for the sense of genuine connection she remembered from childhood but had been unable to fully access as an adult. She had tried every genuine spiritual method available to her, such as retreats and contemplative practice. She compared it to trying to grasp something tangible that was always just slightly beyond her reach. She approached this with a sense of fatigue, as if she had already tried many things and was eager to try another. She didn't have high expectations. 2 weeks later, she used a single term to describe the transformation: coincidences. A sensation that the signal had been reactivated. She had always known the language in which God spoke, but she had forgotten how to receive it. She advanced as time passed. Similarly, others in her vicinity followed suit, with a few eventually incorporating the neuroactive component of Dr. Lake's larger protocol, which supplements the frequency work. However, the audio track was just the beginning for her. 7 minutes. The frequency has been restored. That was the point when everything changed. I'd now like to address the aspect of you that is currently cautious, because that component has no antagonistic effects on this. In reality, it demonstrates sagacity. You've previously experimented with products that made lofty claims but ultimately delivered subpar results. As a result, I will not ask that you accept my word. I would like to focus your attention on the mechanism. Sound practices, meditation, breathing exercises, and healing. All of these methods require the suppressed brain to reorganize itself from within. That's a slow pace. It is uncertain. It is analogous to instructing a dial to operate autonomously without human intervention. Brain entertainment operates in a distinct way. It introduces frequency from the outside, and the brain responds. That's not a claim. It is documented physics that is used in neurology and can be measured in real time with EEG equipment. Doctor. Lake's construction has been used by over 18,000 people. The results are not sporadic. It is consistent. Furthermore, if the figure of $39 concerns you, I'd like to provide a simple explanation. A single session of clinical biofeedback therapy, which uses adjacent principles, costs around $300. The cost of a home biofeedback device exceeds $7,000. Months are usually required for the majority of people who take either of these paths to see any predictable results. C. Doctor. Lake's creation condenses 34 years of research into a mere 7 minutes of audio, which is accessible from any location. There is no appointment, device, or regimen that requires a discipline that you do not currently possess. Doctor, the price is $39, not the standard $49 that is charged in all other locations. Lake's mission was never primarily commercial, which is why he made it available specifically to this community. If you listen to the information and nothing changes, or if you finish the 7-minute session and nothing in you has changed, you will receive a full refund. There is no limit to the number of times you can listen before making a decision, and there are no requirements. The only true cost of failing to attempt is the cost of leaving the dial in the position it was placed due to the decline effect. The 7-minute digital audio track I'm describing is known as the Genius Song. Simply put on your headphones, find a quiet place to sit or lie down, and listen. This is the full scope of the practice. There are no spiritual prerequisites, mantras, or required postures. 7 minutes of frequency meticulously calibrated by someone who has spent 3 decades researching the precise steps required to restore the brain to the state that God intended. I am not offering it for sale. The tool I am directing you toward is a recalibration, a restoration of what was always yours in the first place. If the description of the research speaks to your spirit, you can find more information in the pinned comment below this message. Only investigate if you are compelled to do so. In addition, I'd like to clarify something before you begin your investigation. There are imitation tracks circulating with similar names but without the actual brain entrainment technology. These tracks are simply ordinary audio that has been enhanced to resemble the real thing. The link in the pinned comment is the only source for the actual construction of what Dr. Lake created, including all 4 bonus materials and the money-back guarantee. Not a streaming service, not a search engine, and not located anywhere else. I'm not saying this to put you under pressure, rather it's to keep you safe. You've come a long way on your journey, and receiving a counterfeit item would be unjust. The restored version of you, with a clear frequency, sharp perception, and a spirit receiving the version for which it was designed, is already reflecting on this moment. This is not due to a product. Rather, it is a decision to stop leaving the dial in the position it was in due to the decline effect and return it to the position that God intended. Draw a deep breath. What I've just demonstrated is genuine, and the next phase is the period in which you allow everything to settle, the point at which the message that has been conveyed for so long finally has a home. I'd like to inform you of your identity. Not the person that difficult seasons tried to persuade you to be. Not the version shaped by disappointments, silence, or the weight of carrying things alone for an extended period of time. I'd like to tell you about the version of yourself that God has always known, the version that existed before you encountered any of it. A seer is you. You can perceive things that the majority of your peers cannot. The impression that arrives without a source, the knowing that precedes logic, and the sense of what is real beneath what is only loud are all signals that you pick up on the edges of everyday life. That is not a fault in your wiring. This is your task. Seers are not allowed to observe the world directly. They are positioned to act as the eyes of those who are unable to see for themselves. You're a voice. Language is present in the items you transport. Genuine language, the kind that strikes a chord with people who have been waiting for it without knowing why. Being a voice does not mean being loud. You do not have to be visible, polished, or certain. You are present solely by virtue of your willingness. That is, you are amenable. You are a messenger for the truth. If you remain out of alignment for an extended period of time, your entire system will register the cost. That is not an issue of sensitivity. That is the architecture of a person who is meant to communicate truth, whose interior design is based on authenticity rather than performance. The world requires truth-tellers more than it does impressive people. You act as an intermediary. You are at the intersection of concepts that most people regard as distinct: the spiritual and the practical, the ancient and the contemporary, the tangible and the intangible. Your presence eases the transition between those worlds for people who are unable to navigate them without the assistance of someone like yourself. Additionally, you are a spiritual warrior. You maintain your position. This has been demonstrated in the wilderness, in the long silence, and in seasons that would have broken someone who was not built for exactly what you are. You kept your position despite your inability to predict the outcome. Warriors do not hold their positions solely because they are confident of their victory. They keep it because that is their natural purpose. You came into this season looking for an explanation for the silence, and now you understand why it was built. You began with doubt as a form of protection, and now use discernment as a tool. You arrived unsure whether you were truly observed, but you now realize that you have always been observed by a witness who does not miss anything. You inquired about whether God was still speaking, and you have since discovered that he never stopped. Not one time. Not for a single day during the season you traveled. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give you a tangible item that you can use in the first quiet moment after this talk ends. I refer to it as the Shema practice. 3 simple steps you can take right now from wherever you are. The initial phase is unchanged. Allow yourself 5 minutes of silence before picking up your phone, before the noise, and before anything else that tries to take your attention when you first wake up in the morning. Not a protocol. Not a performance. Silence. Allow space to exist before filling it. The second step is to rotate. Not necessarily internally, but definitely not physically. Orient yourself to the core of your identity. Face forward in your spirit and let your hands open in your imagination. Shema is a posture that encompasses one's entire being, and it can be chosen prior to the circumstances that require it. Turn your attention to the speaker before you are certain you are hearing them. The turning always happens before the hearing. The third step is to receive. Simply being available and open, without presenting a list or asking for specific responses. Recognize the emergence of an image, a direction, a sense of settling, or a word that appears unexpectedly in those quiet minutes as the start of a signal, not a random thought. There is genuine movement via the frequency that is already present within you. And if the 7 minutes in the pinned comment are something you feel compelled to use as you begin this practice, and if what Dr. Lake created appeals to your spirit, it is specifically designed for that purpose. To return the receiver to the position where the Shema practice allows it to access something it was previously unable to access, all that is required is 5 quiet minutes and the willingness to turn. I'd like to do an activity with you before we conclude. This is an activation, not a ceremony, and can be received without having to relocate. I would like you to imagine a door in the interior of your being, not out loud, but from within. This door should be real, not dramatic or symbolic, and it should represent the next chapter of your life. Life is not easy or perfect. It is the life that the frequency within you was always meant to live. The life that your formation has been preparing you to enter without being overwhelmed by its weight. Imagine yourself standing in front of it. And now, in your imagination, shift your weight forward, not by pushing or forcing, but by making the smallest movement of intention, such as leaning towards something you've decided you want. In your mind, shift your weight forward and observe how it affects you. The peaceful internal shift you feel is not the result of wishful thinking. It is your spirit accepting a reality. It is the frequency within you that responds to the direction in which it was always designed to move. That acknowledgement is genuine. Withhold it. You are not alone in carrying this burden. Chosen ones are currently going through this transition in a variety of time zones, languages, and seasons that appear different from the outside but feel very similar on the inside. The frequency is increasing. And if someone who has been unusually quiet recently or who is going through a change comes to mind during this message, they are unable to fully explain but share it with them, not as content, but as a word from one chosen one to another. Because they may require proof that their situation is not unique and has a name. Let us now conclude in the manner intended. Father, we end this message with genuine gratitude. I appreciate how accurate your timing is. I am grateful for each season of silence that was actually preparation. For each morning that seemed like nothing but was actually formation, and for every moment of hidden faithfulness that you witnessed, even when no one else was there to witness it. We are sincerely grateful. You can see the full weight of what each person here has been carrying, every prayer offered without an audience, every yes spoken before the evidence arrived, and every moment of faithfulness that no one but you counted on. You counted it. You never missed a moment of it. As a result, we give up control. We reject the antiquated idea that silence meant absence. We reject the interpretation that the delay was a form of punishment. We give up the burden of carrying something that was never meant to be carried alone. The ceiling of what we have allowed ourselves to believe is possible for us is lifted. We heal the old wounds of those who couldn't see God's progress and didn't know how to protect it. We break the habit of comparing ourselves to timelines that were never our own. We dispel the myth that this time will end the same way as the previous one. We also release the suppression, which is the total weight of all the factors that contributed to the dial's movement away from its original position. We are pleased to announce its immediate release and encourage increased frequency. We activate the identity that has always been valid. We summon the seer, which increases the signal's clarity and sharpens perception. We summon the voice. The language you possess is one that is ready for expression. The truth carrier is summoned, and the alignment is restored, leading to a decrease in performance. We summon the bridge, and the connections that your assignment was always supposed to make will emerge. And we summon the spiritual warrior. You have consistently held this position and continue to do so with the confidence of someone who has been validated in critical situations. We activate every appropriate relationship that is moving toward you, every door that the formation has prepared for you to walk through without stumbling, every resource that is in line with the assignment, and every connection that resonates with the one that is coursing through you. We provide protection for this rising, prevent the exposure of what is being built in the upcoming season, shield the frequency from the static that longs to return, and shield the chosen one from the old pattern of undoing things when they are close enough to hold. Speak this message from the depths of your being, given the significance it has carried. I've been selected. I am a warrior, a bridge, a truth teller, a voice, and a seer. I am a vessel of the living God, entering the season for which I was created and walking in a restored frequency. That is my assignment, not arrogance or performance. I am currently hearing the Father speak to you with the authority of someone who has been watching your every move. Go. You have everything you need, just as you have always had everything you need. I did not create you for the wilderness. I built you for the future. I will be by your side for everything that happens after this. Please do not close it at this time. Before proceeding, take a moment to relax in the declaration made over you. Allow it to settle in an area deeper than the surface. Allow the frequency of the spoken word to permeate the space within you that has been waiting for this moment. There is a brighter future than you have witnessed today. What has been restored here is only the beginning of the possibilities that this season will bring. A destiny's embrace, the fullness that a chosen one enters when the frequency finally runs clear, when the assignment begins to take visible shape, lies ahead of you. You are only now starting to take the first steps towards it. It's been completed and sealed. Amen. If this message elicits genuine emotion in you, allow the information you've received to last beyond this moment. Someone in your life has been carrying the same burden as you, and they need to know that the silence has a name and that they are not alone in dealing with it. Distribute this information among them. Furthermore, if you want to continue receiving messages tailored to your specific personality, season, and frequency, you must stay in close contact. What follows is intended with you in mind. Selected individual, stop. Not in a slow or gradual manner. Please halt immediately. Please refrain from scrolling. Refrain from multitasking. Avoid letting your thoughts wander. Take a single breath, hold it, and then exhale. Have you witnessed the recent event? The air is thicker, the internal noise has decreased, and something in your chest has shifted without your knowledge. That is a spiritual pause, not imagination or emotion. This is not an ordinary moment. This message is not filler, and the timing is not coincidental. God has entered your timeline and informed you that this section is not meant to be shared, rushed, or watched with background noise. This is the reason. He instructed you to watch this alone at this time because the message he is about to deliver cannot be interrupted. Individuals, pay close attention. God does not arbitrarily isolate people. Rather, he strategically separates them. A fragile message is whispered, a sacred moment is guarded, and a delicate transition is protected. The following words cannot pass through fear, old wounds, people's opinions, emotional residue, and the pressure to explain yourself, which is why God called you out of the crowd. This message demands clarity rather than a reaction. And God forbid you should stay in the noise for another second, as you could have responded from the wrong location. Someone has recently tested your spirit, not accidentally or unknowingly. They've been pushing subtle buttons, reopening old conversations, mentioning things they know affect you, and encouraging reactions rather than understanding. Furthermore, God stated that it was sufficient. Not because you are weak, but because the form you are taking is currently unstable. This fragility is not due to strength, but to formation, which must be protected. God did not bring you to this location to comfort you, but rather to protect you. In some cases, a single emotionally charged sentence can undo months of obedience. A single reaction can reopen doors that God has already closed, and a single explanation can grant access to people who do not have clearance. As a result, God halted you not to silence you permanently, but to prepare you for the next level. This is why your thoughts have recently become cluttered, your patience has been put to the test, and old wounds have been unexpectedly brushed aside. The enemy does not attack at random. Instead, they strike during transitions. This is because if they are unable to destroy you, they will seek to provoke you. I'd like to identify the emotions you've been experiencing. You no longer feel compelled to defend your intentions, explain yourself, or engage in unproductive conversations. Furthermore, you are no longer motivated by environments that were previously considered normal. And some of you wondered what was wrong with me, but there was nothing. You're maturing emotionally. God is enhancing your emotional posture. You now pause where you once reacted, recognize where you once defended, and notice where you once explained. That is not withdrawal, but rather the installation of wisdom. Concentrate on this. Your energy is limited, valuable, and guarded. This is due to the fact that God declared this season untouchable. You are in spiritual quarantine not because you are ill, but because you are posing a threat to the enemy. A single incorrect response can cause a delay, whereas a single correct response of silence can speed up the entire process. This is not a season for establishing one's identity. Rather, it is a time to protect the person they are becoming. Let's be honest. There are people who are uneasy around you right now. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've stopped being predictable. Your tranquility disrupts their chaos. Your silence exposes their noise, and your boundaries limit their access. They try to resurrect the former you by referencing your past self and poking at wounds that are no longer infected. For what reason? They are waiting for your response in order to regain a sense of familiarity. However, heaven warns us not to resurrect what I have buried. You're no longer that version. This is crucial. Silence is not a form of avoidance, but rather a strategy. Calmness is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it indicates authority. Passivity is not synonymous with stillness. Rather, it refers to obedience. Every time you fail to respond, you disrupt a pattern, collapse a trap, and fail an assignment. The adversary had anticipated defense, panic, and an explanation. Instead, you maintained your position, leaving him perplexed. Chosen one, you are currently caught between your previous identity and the one that God is revealing to you. Furthermore, this region is dangerous because both heaven and hell watch over it. God is cultivating discernment in you, not just blessings and opportunities. The ability to perceive what is wrong without evidence, to leave without resolution, and to put one's trust in silence over noise. This is instruction preparation, as the next phase requires direction that must be received without contamination.